Hi there, my name is Ron Rogers, and this is the story about a student pilot of mine when I was an Air Force instructor in the T-37 who just would not give up. It's actually a pretty amazing tale. He's also one of the students who made a very concerted effort to try to kill me on a number of occasions, myself and another instructor or so in the group. But let's talk about the situation here first. Now, I went through pilot training back in 1973 at Vance Air Force Base in Enid, Oklahoma, and I was plowed back to be a T-37 flight instructor. So it's kind of the blind leading the blind here, but if you want to learn how to do something, teach it. Now, Enid, Oklahoma was a very interesting place. Yes, Enid by the Sea, we called it. I think it had 52 churches in town, and you go to open a banking account, anything like that, they try to talk you into going to their church. And of course, one of the main places of activity on base for the pilots and the student pilots was the Officers Club. And I one time heard there's an interesting demographic out there. I one time heard one of my students referring to D1s and D2s. And I go, what are you guys talking about? And these were the bachelor students. And they said, that's a woman who's divorced with one kid or divorced with two. He says, we're at the point now when a woman comes over to us in the bar. We don't ask we don't ask if she's divorced or not. We just ask how many kids she has. All right, so here's the Bible, primary flying jet. This tells you how to fly the illustrious 6,000-pound dog whistle, the only aircraft specifically designed to convert JP4 into noise. Now, as a student, I was a co-editor of the yearbook for our class, and we picked a very interesting theme there. You got to be careful about how you do things like this because 50 years later, it can come back to haunt you when one of your classmates shows up and brings a copy of the book. Now, it was kind of funny. I was flying to Maui, and I flew there a lot. And, of course, they make an announcement of who the captain is. And the flight attendant said, hey, there's a guy back in seat 16B who says he knows you. And I go, really? So I go back there, and if I hadn't have known which seat he was in, I would have probably not even recognized him because, people change. I look a lot different, too. See, George looked a lot younger back then, but it was kind of fun. He retired from the Air Force, lives on Maui. His father was a B-24 bomber pilot during World War II, and that was quite interesting. But yeah, he lives out on Maui now, so I would see him a number of times when I'd lay over there. But okay, let's talk about being an Air Force student pilot. Now, before you would go up on a flight, the instructor would thoroughly brief you on everything you could expect to accomplish on this flight, the conduct of the flight, the syllabus, the maneuvers in great detail, and then you'd go up and fly. All right, here's a student in the 6,000-pound dog whistle, the T-37. All right, it can be a little intimidating. You put the helmet on, you put the parachute on, you close the canopy, and that could be difficult for some students. They'd get claustrophobic, they would get sick, it could be hot, the air conditioning system wasn't the most wonderful. People left the program for a number of reasons. They just couldn't tolerate air sickness, and they ended up washing out, although we had a few who really pushed through that and survived. Other times, you'd have the self-induced expulsion where they just said, hey, we can't do this. Or it could come down to it that you could just come up and not be able to solo, and in a month, you could be gone. I had in my ROTC class, I said I wanted to go in right away. Another guy said he wanted to delay it a month. Well, he ended up delaying it a year. I could have been his flight instructor when this guy in my class in college ROTC finally came through pilot training. But he's in the next flight, and I'm going home for a week's vacation, and I say, hey, let's get together when I get back, and, we'll have dinner, stuff like that. I come back, and he had already SIE'd, self-induced expulsion. So here he is, he waits a year, and I never found the details about exactly what happened, but here you wait a year, and you just say, that's it, I'm out of here. But, okay, I digress. Now, the T-37 could be quite intimidating. I mean, there are a lot of clocks and bells and whistles and knobs and all sorts of things in there, and all sorts of stuff to generate that you can get very airsick, and that can be intimidating. So it's quite a lot for a new pilot to try to absorb. And now let's show you a little bit about a student demeanor here. Okay, this is a typical Air Force student. Look at the guy there. Of course, you can tell he doesn't have any wings on. He kind of has that look of, I have no idea what I'm doing here. I'm kind of, I'm standing next to the airplane. I'm kind of a little bit, I don't know what's going on. Look at that. The guy doesn't even have gloves on. All right, well, here is that same guy. A little bit over a year later, now he's back. He's an instructor. Look at that. He's got the white scarf on. He's got the gloves on now. He even actually gets the Nomex glove. And look at that sign of confidence and just, I'm a cool jet pilot now. We typically didn't wear the white scarf there, but this was we were going to talk to some ROTC students at my hometown, so we dressed up for that. But now back to this interesting student, the student who would not die. Maybe not a good term, but that's from a book called The Airman That Wouldn't Die, which had to do with dirigibles and stuff like that, and also a flight, that Eastern Airline Flight 409, I believe it was, or 401, I forget. Anyway, I totally digress. Well, students can end up with a nickname depending on, various characteristics and stuff like that. And this one was kind of based on possibly the guy's name. We called him the P.T. Barnum Flying Circus because this guy was quite interesting. He would do some very interesting things that had us scratching our heads, and also in some cases almost fear of our life, depending on the situation. All right, so here's the runway layout at Vance Air Force Base at Enid, Oklahoma, and you see that far runway to the left there, the short 5,000-foot one. That's for the T-37s. The T-38s operate typically off the center, and the one on the right there. So that's our short little runway there. And okay, we start out, we're going to do some patterns, and we're going to go up to the Auxiliary Air Force Base at Kegelman because, you come back and you do a few patterns here, but you do most of your patterns up at Kegelman just kind of to relieve the traffic situation. So there we get into our trusty steed and we taxi on out, and we're going to take off and we're going to fly on up to Kegelman. Now, anybody familiar with Vance Air Force Base who flew out there knows these secret profiles there of going from one way or the other about how you enter the pattern, the various procedures and stuff like that. And there's a little mobile control unit next to the runway, like a little tower. And you sit in there and you make sure the pilots have their gear down and stuff like that, and you basically clear them in the pattern when it starts to get crowded. All right, here is a picture of Kegelman Auxiliary Airfield Base there, and okay, flying was so long ago, everything was black and white back then. But I'm up there and I'm doing patterns with our flying circus individual here, and it's not going too bad. But then we have one landing where all of a sudden we touch down, the nose slams down, we start fishtailing, and it's like, what's going on here? And I yell, holy defecation, or something like that. And the student takes his hands off of the controls, and I take it. And once I take it, the fishtailing stops. We go straight and we take off. Well, we do a few more patterns, and every time we kind of slow down, there's this ting, 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 and I'm not quite figuring out exactly what that was. Well, we get back to Enid, Oklahoma, and advance, and we're pulling into the chocks there, and the mechanic looks at the tire, he looks at me, he looks at the tire, and he says, I want to show you this. Well, it was like you took the tire and you shaved the top off. Well, we realized that P.T. Barnum had landed most likely with both brakes locked and almost blew the tires. That would have been kind of interesting. But that explained the fishtailing and the ding, 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 things like that. So, okay. Well, he's not doing very well, and of course he got an unsat on this because this is just not the way to fly an airplane, Air Force or otherwise. So I come back there and we have the assistant flight commander, a Captain Thorton. Now, okay, I'm a second lieutenant. I've got maybe, 200 hours total flight time. See, the first time around, they give you all the good students, and you go, man, this is easy. Second class, you're just out there with everybody, and you get a couple ones that can be interesting. And that's what happened to me. And I explained to Captain Thornton, much more time than me, much senior. I said, you got to watch him. He does strange things, and it can be very unusual. And Captain Thornton puts his hand on my shoulder and he goes, son, I always like it when they do son. He goes, son, I'm a very experienced pilot. I'm an instructor pilot in the KC-135 I had been. It'll be no problem. I'll take care of it. Okay, fine. Well, he's a captain. I'm a second lieutenant. He probably must know a lot more about flying than I do. So you got it. Go up, have a fun time with the flying circus there. So it's my turn to go out to Mobile there, where we control the airfield at Kegelman, and okay, that's fine. So I go up there and I'm watching, and Captain Thornton and Lieutenant, the flying circus come up there, and it's kind of interesting. He touches down, but in this time, instead of fishtailing, he makes kind of a fishtail, but he goes right towards the side of the runway. And I mean, he went so much towards the side of the runway, he was almost going to go off the runway, and his wingtip kicked up a bunch of dust, and he came back and stuff like that, and he took off, and I just heard Captain Thornton says, "We're going to the tubes," which is the practice area. And I thought, well, that's interesting. It's unusual just to come in and do one pattern and then leave. But okay, he goes up there, and oh, by the way, and I wanted to point this out again. I got this picture off the internet, and I got a kick out of it. It says security information restricted. I think by now, probably all the foreign powers that be may know where Kegelman Air Force Base, Auxiliary Air Force Base, near Enid, Oklahoma, is located. It's by the Great Salt Lake up there, Salt Plains or whatever it's called. I don't think there's any reason that this should be restricted. But anyway, okay. Well, I'm done with the mobile unit, so I come in, and the lieutenant comes down the hallway, and he says, I said, what happened? He says, well, you know that thing that happened with us? And I go, yeah. Well, it happened again with Captain Thornton too. And I said, and he said the same thing you did, holy whatever. And he took the aircraft and he just went up flying. And for 15 minutes, we just flew around in the practice area. And I would say, Captain Thornton, and he'd go, "Shut up, Barham." And I'd wait a few minutes. Well, Captain, shut up. So he wouldn't talk to me. And I came back in and he said, "Sign in with it unsat." And so I see Captain Thornton then shortly thereafter coming down the hallway, and he's got this look of just almost terror on his face. And he says, "You were right about him. You were right." And I go, "What happened?" He says, "Well, where he landed with one brake locked with you? He landed with only, with both brakes blocked with you. He landed with me with only one brake locked." And he says, "I think it's a lot better if both are locked instead of just one, because we almost went off the runway." And I said, "Yeah, I saw that. It looked pretty bad." And he goes, "Yeah, it was pretty bad." He says, "I just flew around for 15 minutes and said, heck with it, I'm coming back." Okay, well, that's the first part of the story. There were a few issues with improper brake usage. And of course, if this airplane had anti-skid, it would have probably not have had that sort of result, but it did not. It was very basic airplane. So, okay, that is the first part of difficulties with the pattern. Well, there's a second part to this story. All right, we're going to go up and we're doing spins. And spins is a big part of the T-37. It was built to be able to spin and to teach Air Force pilots how to spin and all sorts of good stuff like that. So that's a big part of the program. And anybody who has ever gone through the T-37, I know they're gone now, they're replaced by the T-6, but anybody who went through the T-37 knows throttle's idle, rudder and ailerons neutral, stick abruptly full aft and hold, rudder abruptly 5 full rudder, opposite spin direction, opposite turn needle and hold, stick abruptly full forward 1 turn after applying rudder, controls neutral after spinning stocks, and recover from dive. You had to recite that exactly, every word exactly, you had to write it down precisely, and that was the single spin recovery. Now the thing about this, it didn't take a lot of finesse. Okay, throttle's idle, well, that's in your left hand here. You pull them back, you go to idle. Okay, that's not too hard. rudder and ailerons neutral. Well, that's not too bad. You put the stick in the center and you don't have any rudder in. Stick abruptly full aft and hold. That's in case, no matter what spin you are, it's going to put you in an upright normal spin. So, okay, you bring the stick full back. Rudder abruptly pie, full rudders, opposite spin direction, opposite turn needle. In case you can't figure that out, there's a little turn needle down there. You do that and hold. Okay. You hold it, and you hold it for one turn, because stick abruptly full forward, one turn after applying rudder. And that you're going to recover very nice and soon doing that. Okay, it's very mechanical. Then controls neutral after spinning stops. You'll be in a dive, so you recover from the dive. Okay, very mechanical. And he was having problems with it. He could not do a spin. Every time he got the full aft stick. Everything worked good. He got throttles idle. Okay. He got the rudder and ailerons neutral. Not hard to do that. Stick abruptly full aft and hold. Okay, that's fine. But every time he went to apply opposite rudder, he came forward on the stick. And I go, no, hold the stick. And I even tried to help him once in a while, but he'd come forward on the stick. And I go, okay, we need to work on this. So we went to the extremely expensive, high quality, high fidelity simulator that we had. Okay, this is called chair flying. Okay, item number 1, green arrow. That is a plumber's helper. That is the stick in the T37, simulated. There's no trim knob on top. Item number 2, we did not have this when we did the chair flying. This is a stair stepper there that can, I guess, be used for rudders if you've really got the high fidelity setup here, chair flying. Number 3, the cat. You really don't need that, but it's not bad to have a cat, because if you have a cat, you always know which way is down, because cats always land on their feet. Okay, so we went through this. I talked him through it. I had him mechanically do the steps. I'm going, you got one turn. Now what do you do? And he got it. He could mechanically do all the steps. And I'm going, okay, great, problem solved. Let's go back up and fly. All right, we go back up and fly. And same thing again. Every time he applies the opposite rudder, the stick comes forward. We go into accelerated spin. The thing wraps up like that, and it's really exciting. That's special sound effects at great expense there I put in. Like that, and it goes fast. Okay. Come on back. I've got it. So I recover, pull out. We'll go. Let's do another one. Okay, same thing. We're in the third one now, and it's the same response. Every time opposite rudder, the stick comes forward. And okay, now I'm going to try to talk him through it. Okay, pull the stick back. We can settle into the normal spin, and he can get back into the recovery steps. Okay, go neutral, pull the stick back. Okay, pull the stick back, and okay, fine. Now go opposite rudder. Stick comes forward. Okay, I've let this go on a little farther than I should. Normally it's a 3G recovery. Well, I get on, we're a little bit low in the tubes. The altitude, the minimum altitude is 10,000 feet, and we're getting close to this. And so I do a 4G pullout. All right, here's what happens. He had a little issue with a disc. He was not telling anybody about this. It had been a previous event that he knew of, and every time that he kicked that full opposite rudder, it put pressure on his back, and it caused pain with this disc. And actually what happened when I pulled the 4Gs, that was sufficient pressure that it actually ruptured his disc, and he was generally in agony over there. And I'm going, what's going on over here? And he's just moaning. And I'm looking over there, and I'm not, what's wrong with you? And I'm trying to talk to him, and he is incoherent. So I called the supervisor flying. I said, hey, something's wrong with my student here. I'm going to need medical help to get him out of the cockpit. I mean, can you get some medical people there to help him out, because he's going to need help, and probably need to take the flight surgeon. Could have the ambulance, something like that. So okay, fine. He says we'll take care of that. Well, little did I know that you cannot simply, at least at this time, at this training base, you cannot simply just say, hey, I'd like the ambulance to meet the airplane, help the guy out. It's not necessarily an emergency, not that I'm a doctor, but, just to help him out. Well, I don't realize that what you had to do at that time was, the only way you could get that support was to declare an emergency, or have emergency declared for you, which is what the supervisor of flying did. And he didn't tell me he was declaring an emergency. He just did. So I'm coming back into land, and I see all these fire trucks down there. The runway is lined with fire trucks, and we're parked right in the Yellowtails. I remember right at you got down on the runway, you turned left off, and you went right into parking right there because we were the end group. And I said, well, we better get off the runway. Somebody's got an emergency here, and we're in the way, and I felt kind of bad about it. So I pulled off. I pulled into the Yellowtails, and I'm right there on the end, and I stop. I'm feeling good. I'm out of the way. Well, then I hear on the radio that the emergency aircraft has just parked. Oh, that's me. Okay, I'm surrounded by more people than probably needed, but we got the medics, and they got him out, and they took him in the ambulance up to the base hospital. Well, that's when it came out what really had happened, and the fact that he'd kind of been hiding this. I can't blame him. The guy wanted to be a pilot, okay, but he wasn't being honest like that. But so what ended up happening was he had an operation. And what happens, you are now on to NIF, duty not including flying. And they took a year to recover. So for a year, he stood behind the desk scheduling there and did a non-flying job in the program there. So after a year, he's healed up. They take him back to another flight, another group of instructors, spread the joy around. And unfortunately, he started the program all over again, actually. He started right from the beginning. Well, he had been off a year, that's fair. They started him right from square one, giving him a chance. But, and I don't remember exactly what the issue was, but he ends up washing out. And now here's the interesting thing about what happens if you wash out as an Air Force pilot. Now, I had a degree in electrical engineering, and before I ever left ROTC, I signed a paper that says, if I wash out of pilot training, they are keeping me as an electrical engineer because the Air Force needed electrical engineers, and they'd be more than happy to get me in that capacity. Well, I had some friends who had general studies degree, which means you got enough credits to get a degree of some sort, but you really had no specialty or nothing. And this student had a forestry degree. Well, as far as I know, there is not a big demand for people with forestry degrees in the Air Force. And so they basically said, sorry about that. So after almost 2 years, he left the program, and I have no idea where he went to. Unfortunately, that's the sad event that he tried, and he tried hard. I mean, this guy had more staying power, more gumption. I admire him for that. I mean, he wanted this. He could have quit. He had good reason to quit because this was not easy. He was undergoing a lot of pain. He was having a lot of difficulty, but basically he was not able to, salvage his career. That's destroying the old T-37s, which is kind of sad. But anyway, he was not able to salvage his career. But he gave it a good try, and he gave a number of us some pretty good scares along the way. The old thing where, always watch the guy in the left seat because he's probably trying to kill you. May not intentionally, but he's trying. Anyway, that's the story of one student. Thanks for watching.